Welcome, affiliated listeners, to another episode of the Affiliated Podcast, where we give you all the marketing secrets and things that you need to be better marketers and especially better affiliate marketers in whatever capacity that means your business, whether you're using affiliates or you are affiliates. And today we're going to have a conversation that I know we've had tidbits of this before, but it still is a pervasive issue. And we're talking with the amazing Claire Winslow about it. Claire is she owns and runs a Facebook media buying agency that's fantastic. She's working with all sorts of brands. She's been doing this since 2015, which she'll reference because, boy, Facebook was different back then. But she is I would put an expert in really understanding how Facebook has changed. But unlike some people, she's been able to continue to still be successful for her clients, for herself in that realm. And today we really want to talk about what's changed, how it's changed, and what she's doing to pivot. And maybe hopefully that'll help you guys figure out what you need to do and pivot in your business, especially going into 2023 as we continue to say goodbye to all the weirdest years of all of our lives that we've experienced for the past two. So with that, first, I'm obviously joined by my amazing co-host, Thomas, and Claire, of course. How are you doing today? Great to see you. And for those that are watching on video, Claire's fantastic closet, which many of us are very envious of, white, organized, and large. So, man, there's a weird joke there that I'm just going to leave be, but how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. And as I said earlier, my fiance and I spent 2 years building a house, and we forgot that we both work from home a whole lot and have calls all day long. So this is kind of my office now. Instead of doing a Facebook ads, we could do a closet tour, but I think since most of you are listening on audio, that would be pretty boring.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, for all the Gen Zers, millennials that remember cribs, maybe one day we'll do the YouTube version of like cribs on marketers for, like, I don't know, the 50 people that really care, but we'll save that for
Right?
later, right? So, but
Yeah,
please
these are
sign up. That'd be
the t-shirts I wear every day.
great.
Um,
Well, perfect. Well, let's roll into it. So with just to get things going, I know we kind of just glossed over your history here a little bit. And honestly, I'll just put it this way. You're awesome at what you do. You've been doing it for a while. Great. We can move on to the next part, which is, given that you're so awesome at what you do, given that things have changed so much, talk me through a little bit about, like, actually what I'd love to do is, when it first came out, when iOS first came out, we saw that targeting get stripped away from Facebook. Walk me through the oh shit moments and what you did to kind of pivot and change.
Yeah. So, most of you on here, I imagine, kind of know, if you were running Facebook ads at that time, you got hit. Everyone did. I think for a while we were all like, I was in all these groups, and a lot of people were saying, and they're still saying, and I appreciate that they're saying that. And I have some things about that too, but they're all saying, like, you know, have good copy and good creative. And, like, yeah, for sure, but there's so much else going on. And, I think it's really a bummer to, like, be a small business owner and to have had this, like, really awesome strategy built out that included great copy and great creative, and, to have kind of the bottom fall out. So I can kind of walk you guys through a little bit of a timeline of what happened. I am, unique in that I'm actually kind of team Facebook on this one. I think a lot of marketers are team Facebook as opposed to Apple, but a lot of lay people were pro Apple for a long time, which was like a really interesting dichotomy. When I give this talk from stage, I pull up the little blip, and I talk about neurolinguistic programming around iOS, which is a unique perspective on it, I think. But NLP, essentially, depending on how you look at it, is either like could a force for good or a manipulative way to get people to do what you want. And I think that that's what Apple did. This pop-up started to happen with iOS 14, and the language they used was really interesting, and all the little NLP tidbits that they threw in this tiny little pop-up, I think, were really interesting. And the phrase was exactly allow, like, let's say Facebook is who we're talking about, say allow Facebook to track your activity across other companies, apps, and websites, ? And then first, that was in bold, would say ask app not to track. And then second, which was not in bold, would say allow. And, like, even as a marketer, and even though I knew this was coming down the pipe, like, the first time I saw that pop up, like, I just clicked ask app not to track. And then I was like, whoa, no, I want to be tracked. Like, I want personalized ads. But the way that it's phrased is in such a way that, like, of course people are going to click that. So there's debate on how many people clicked ask app not to track and ask and allow, but I've heard as much as 96% of people clicked ask app not to track, which means that 4% of people sort of understood what this question was about. Which again, around this time, Apple's like running commercials. I have one I can put in the show notes later. Like they're super funny, cute commercials about like a guy going about his day and like people following him and asking him questions. And it's this like anti-tracking commercial. And Apple's trying to position themselves like this is about you. This is about, your privacy. Tim Cook on December 17th, 2020, he tweeted, "We believe users should have the choice over the data that is being collected about them and how it's used. Facebook can continue to track users across apps and websites as before. App tracking transparency in iOS 14 will just require that they ask for your permission first." And it gets like all this positive feedback from people that aren't marketers. Meanwhile, marketers are, totally freaking out.
I wonder if anyone's read the terms and conditions or terms of service on their iPhone or iOS or anything like that.
Yeah. So when I give this from stage, I literally like have most people who have an iPhone, everybody in the audience, like pull theirs out and, go into settings, scroll down to privacy, scroll down to the bottom that says Apple advertising, and then read me that little blurb, like someone from the audience. And it says, so this is obviously auto toggled on because of course it would be. And it says, so going back to NLP, this one says it in a totally different way, which is turning off personalized ads will limit Apple's ability to deliver relevant ads to you, but will not reduce the number of ads you receive. So when I read that as a layperson, I'm like, oh, this doesn't mean I'm not going to see ads. This just means I'm going to see like Viagra ads instead of like, whatever stuff I buy on Instagram. Like, so that's number one that I think was pretty manipulative. I forget what the word is. Like if this were done in a non-technology realm, this would be like, what is it? Arbitrage or something like this. This would be a concern to people, but because it's in technology and nobody really understands it and it's not as regulated, like it's just fine for them to do.
Yeah. If it was in politics, it'd just be an election cycle. That's all we need.
Yeah. So Apple, in the marketing and technology world, if you ask Apple this question, their retort is essentially, well, we don't track you across platforms. We only track you on our platforms, as opposed to like tracking your behavior when you go to Facebook and that's why Facebook is bad and that's why Apple is good. But again, to the layperson, like I don't think they're considering that the factor is, do you track me across platforms or do you just track a bunch of stuff? Because Apple is still using like, what device do you use? Like what do you read in Apple News? Like it's still using its own suite of stuff to serve you personalized ads. So again, like fine, maybe the terms are slightly different, but to an average person, the thing that they care about, which they thought was privacy, is not super privacy first from either Facebook or Apple. So, in let's see, this is, I think, this article, let's see if it'll let me do it. Yeah. So there's an article in October of 2021 in Forbes that says Apple report says Apple's ad network is the biggest beneficiary of Apple's new marketing rules. So that was October 2021. It's timely that we're speaking now because here's a Bloomberg article in August 14th, which was a big announcement that Apple finds its next big business showing ads on your phone. So essentially, their ad platform has been limited to like news and stocks, I believe. And now it's going to, move out into other things. I don't think it's going to go like obviously cross-platform or into other apps that it doesn't own, but essentially like I see you, Apple. and I don't like it. We've got all these non-marketers like rejoicing in Apple's like privacy crusade. But obviously, as you guys know, and anyone listening, like small businesses were absolutely, the number one casualty of all of this. And I know Kurt, you had Kurt on last year and talking about it, as far as rising CPMs, rising costs, like, and in all these Facebook groups that I'm in, people just like, I think this, when something that people have known how to do really well changes in such a drastic way, there's this like slow burn off. And that was the like good creative and good copy burn off, where like for a year people are like, it's not affecting me at all. And you're like, I don't know. I think it is. And you can't just like come up with cool new creative ways to combat like the beast that is iOS 14.
Do you think, like, I was always curious with the iOS 14 piece and rising CPMs, do you think that contributed to CPMs going up, or was Facebook just like, we need to raise more money, so we're going to charge more for ad space?
Probably both. Um, yeah,
Both
I
can be
mean,
true.
you
Yeah.
know, it's been really interesting, and I don't follow it as much on the financial side and the quarterly side as far as what's happening, but I just know it's a slow and steady fall to the bottom. You know, with everyone spinning their wheels, like Facebook, how do we become meta? How do we, you know, diversify? And then marketers themselves, like, how do we diversify? I mean, the example that I use all the time, because it's my fiance's business, is brute force training. You know, they sell CrossFit equipment to CrossFitters, and you know, when he bought the company, we could be what I call lazy marketers, where we could just be like, hey, Labor Day sale, buy this stuff, and people, and like throw up a picture of, you know, sandbags and weighted vests, and people would be like, whoa, that's me, that's for me, I need that. And it was this really easy process, and we would get like a 4-to-1 ROAS no matter what we did with the copy or creative. It was pretty standard because the audience targeting was so good. And then now, you know, that's not the case. Even with super creative copy and super creative, you know, that golden era, you know, has essentially come to a close. There are lots of things that we're doing to combat it, which I can talk about today. But you know, I think the most meta, pun intended, you know, thing to be aware of is that we can't do what we used to do anymore. We have to pivot.
Well, I love what you mentioned too, the fact that it's you've seen some people like, oh no, it's totally fine because they had such good creative and campaigns as they were going when all this happened. They're like, it's fine. And now they might be, you know, curled up in the fetal position on the floor wondering what happened and why they can't scale campaigns. So I think that transitions nicely into, so what can you do? What can people start doing
Yeah.
now?
Well, one thing I was going to say is, you know, the silver lining of this whole thing, at least from my perspective, not for poor small business owners, but from my perspective as an agency owner, is this really weeded out people that weren't good. You know what I mean? Like, they were the first casualties. Is like, if you've been able to get by in this industry with lazy copy and creative, you know, as a result of Facebook carrying you along, that is not happening anymore. So the pool of people that know what they're doing and are good at this has probably gotten smaller. So what can you do? Okay, so to answer that question, you know, what the implications of this are twofold. Like, the problems that have arisen as a result of iOS 14 are twofold. The one that 90% of people in Facebook groups and everything is talking about is tracking. Oh no, I don't know which ads are leading to which conversions, you know, and there are lots of things that we could talk about today, you know, like domain verification and, you know, prioritizing events, dynamic UTM codes, you know, tracking softwares like Hyros is my personal favorite, but there are a bunch of others, AnyTrack, Triple Whale, stuff like that. You know, there are a lot of things, and that's a pretty boring podcast, honestly. um, so we won't go there, but that's sort of what people are doing to combat these tracking issues, and that's where a lot of people's focus is on. But the ancillary, the more important and secondary result of this problem is that Facebook no longer knows who's in these audiences. So the top funnel, interest based, you know, audiences, the lookalike audiences, like, those are bad. Those are full of bad data or lower data than they used to have. So when we talk about like, what do we do to combat this? That's really the problem that I'm focused on, is like, you know, it's not the golden era anymore. Facebook itself doesn't know who's in these audiences. Like, can we do? So the first one that I have, and this
Real
one,
fast, I just want to pause because I think something you said that really stood out to me. So the idea, because I think there's still, and I still see this with some affiliates where oftentimes they go to offer owners and they ask for a hash buyers list, but you'd probably recommend not to do that anymore because what you're getting back is just not quality data any longer. So that hash buyers list isn't doing anything for you because who they'll pair it up with, it's basically like pulling random jelly beans out of a bowl and saying, yeah, this is exactly what you asked for. So
yeah,
here you
yeah.
go.
So in that brute force example, like the CrossFit audience killed for us, like, and it just did, and it was huge and it was accurate, and we could just run whatever to it and sell, CrossFit equipment to CrossFit people. Now that CrossFit audience is bad. And it's funny because Facebook will even give you a little disclaimer up at the top when you're building your ads. It's like, I don't know about this audience anymore. It's like, sorry, like we're not actually sure. And now they have these things that they'll kind of auto toggle on, and they're like, we might show your ads to people who aren't in this audience if that's cool. Like it's like audience expansion where they're like, it's actually better for you if we don't just focus on the people that are in this audience, because it's not really CrossFitters anymore. Like it might be a little bit, but like we can't really see what they're doing anymore, and so it's just not accurate. So they're trying to tell us, like, and they'll make these quote unquote recommendations the way that Google does, where they're just like, hey, I know it used to be like you put different audiences in different ad sets, but now it's just like, hey, screw it, like put them all together. I don't know. It's just like send this stuff to a really big audience. Don't try to test audiences anymore because we don't we just don't know. So we're back to the golden day, or not the golden days, the pre-golden days, like the early display ad Facebook style stuff where they didn't know everything about everyone, and we just have to assume that we don't anymore. So my first recommendation, which kills me to say publicly, I don't think I have outside of small groups, but Kyle, you've heard me say this.
Teaser guys, big hot take here,
which
take
is
Claire.
totally broad audiences, which like sucks to say as a marketer, because that makes me look like I do not know what I'm doing, and it's very difficult for me to leave off interests and demographics and anything out of these audiences. But I will tell you what keeps happening. I am stubborn. So I'm like, no, like I can't leave it totally broad. Like, let me add something in. And every time I do that against a broad audience, like the broad audience often wins. So so it's a total bummer because, again, if I show my ad sets at this point to someone, they're like, hey, you forgot something. But I didn't. It's really just like if in certain niches, and especially with brute force, like if I run a totally broad ad set against anything else that feels like it would make sense, functional fitness, whatever, look-alike, it's like the broad audience is going to win out because it's a wider audience. The CPMs will likely be lower because they're working overtime to try and show it to more people to get more people to buy. So now it's just a numbers game.
Have the creatives had to change at all with that, or do you just like let the people self-segment when they see the right creative?
Yeah, I think that's why broad works, because the self-segmenting is still working. Like Facebook still has an algorithm that will allow, like by the end of that campaign, CrossFit people are seeing that ad more than they were in the beginning. But it's allowing like the algorithm to do its work over the life of the campaign, rather than saying in the beginning, cutting it off its knees and being like, hey, show it to this bad audience first instead.
Yeah. So it's like the campaigns take more patience now because you have to let the algorithm start to work a little bit, as it's almost like a traditional display. Does that also, I'd imagine that would change the creatives too, because I now can't be like, do you want some sand on that weighted vest? Like, boom, here you go, Labor Day sale. So put the labor in Labor Day. That probably doesn't work as well anymore.
Yeah, so that is a great that brings me to like sort of a second thing that we've been testing, which is, and Kurt mentioned this too, pre iOS, like you were kind of insane to run anything other than like traffic and conversion ads. Everyone's dumping all their money into conversion. Beyond that, maybe a little bit in traffic, but nobody's running all these other objectives because like our goal is revenue. So conversions lead to revenue and traffic leads to conversion. So, outside of those, like, I'm not that interested unless I'm media buying for Pepsi in running like anything that's brand awareness based. Now, you know, traffic and conversion has gotten a lot more expensive. And I also lose people when I send them to my website, because 60 to 80% of traffic is mobile in the US, and 60 to 80% of that mobile traffic is iOS. So it's a huge amount of people that when I'm just running traffic campaigns, my ability to retarget has obviously lessened to, Android and desktop, and I'm losing a lot of that. So I'm sending them like out into the ether without the ability to retarget them. Well, some of the other objectives, brand awareness, I've literally never used. Things like reach, I don't use them very often, but video views and engagement, is making a comeback, because that is something that happens within the Facebook app, and Facebook is aware of it, so they can retarget it. Facebook, knows who engaged with their stuff. They know who watched their videos. And so one of the tactics that we've been doing, especially with these broad audiences where people have to self-select, is I'm having creative teams film like 7 videos. I mean, and this is like if I have an unlimited budget and I can tell them to do whatever I want. But if I can, and they'll listen to me, then, I'll say, okay, I need 7 videos from you. And I want each video to talk about a pain point that somebody might have that would lead them to your product or service. And, so for a sandbag, for instance, it would be like, I travel all the time and I want to be able to take my equipment with me. Well, cool. You can, put an empty sandbag in your suitcase and fill it up with sand on the beach. And now you have, a barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell set. There's another group of people that might be interested in cost. And so they'll do, hey, I don't want to outfit an entire garage gym. I need one piece of equipment that I can do 300 movements with, because it's got 8 handles. So you can make it barbell, dumbbell, kind of whatever you want, squats, cleans, jerks, etc. So that's another like value-based audience that gets a video. And then, there are people that just like want to look really cool, throwing sandbags around. And so there's that component of like, like you came up with, Kyle, like going back to your roots. Like I'm an old school savage and I'm into functional fitness, and I want to, instead of, doing all this dumb stuff people are doing now, I just want to, be a brute.
Yeah.
So again,
Tribal fitness.
so each one of those kind of addresses a different reason that someone might want to use a sandbag, and there's probably 4 more we could come up with. And then with those broad audiences, I am running a video sequence, essentially, where I'm looking for, if these are short videos, I'm looking for like 1 to 2 cent video views from a broad audience, and I'll probably get that. And then I want to retarget anyone who's watched that first video with the second video. And then I want to retarget anyone who's watched that second video with the third video, and so on and so forth. So that by the time I lose them to my website, they are so overqualified that they'll probably buy. Now, again, like you mentioned, Kyle, that's going to take a while. It's not this fast, like we need conversions now kind of thing. But given the nature of Facebook, that has been working, so that when they get to this conversion level, the cost per conversion is a lot lower.
Gotcha. And you're able to keep and track interest.
Exactly.
And you could almost start segmenting, hey, I know this is my group that's watched this video, so that tells me X about them. And
Yeah,
these people
exactly.
who watch this video, it tells me X about them. So sorry, Thomas,
Yeah.
you're about to ask a question too.
I was curious, like this might get a little too nerdy, but are you running, let's say if you've got 7 of those pain point videos, are you running all of those at the same time as a top funnel, I guess you'd call it, kind of brand video view campaign, and then whoever watches one, then you're just kind of interceding with all the rest?
They don't have tons of money, so I can't do this like, in a perfect world. But yeah, essentially we could run,
Sure.
I guess if you're ranking them, you would do like the most obvious pain point first. So like hey, this makes you look cool. If you're into functional fitness, like get into it. And then, beyond that, oh, you can travel with it. Beyond that, like sort of rank what those are, as opposed to running them all at the same time and then having to decipher whoever watched this one. This one. Yeah. So I'm probably, simply to make it simple, running one for a while to build an audience that I know is going to watch the second one.
Gotcha. Okay. And then after someone's watched a 2 or 3 to a certain point, then you're giving them more of a conversion focused campaign. That might be, yeah, because then you're getting, I imagine, much lower CPMs to that than you would have just to a broad audience. Okay.
And then, well, and real fast, so how many videos before, like when you're kind of building this out, what do you anticipate is the amount of videos on average that you'd want to do, or even at minimum that you'd want to do before you're going to have that conversion ask and really drive people to the landing page to buy?
Yeah, I'd say probably at minimum 2,
Minimum
just
2.
because one video could be a fluke, like they stopped their thumb at the at the right time.
We've all done
I've
that.
totally accidentally
Yep.
watched ads and then gotten so they're like, "You're so interested." And I'm like, "Nah." But
Well, I saw someone was saying it's like they don't include people who watch
that's really
100% for that reason, right? It's like no
yeah,
one watches
yeah,
100% of a video, so they cut those people off.
yeah.
People drop off at 97 if
Oh,
they've
and
got what
that
they
that
want or
actually brings
something,
up a
right?
good
Yeah.
point. Is like a default for, video view can mean whatever you want it to be. So, if you've got a short video, like I want to target like 95%. I want to target like an actual through play, someone who watched the whole thing with a short video. Now, if it's 5 minutes, then 20% would be good enough. But for the most part, what I'm doing, by the way, to this goes into a kind of third tactic is I think right now people are tired of hearing brands talk about themselves. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of brands, being like, we're the number. My favorite little copy one is like, we're the number one. It's like, what does that mean? Like number one in like revenue, or like you just are like, we're great. We're
We're
the
the number
best.
one on employees' opinions of us.
Yeah.
No one
Like,
cares more than them
I mean, and
about
I'm
us.
guilty of it. Like I use it and I think people respond well to it, but it's like that is a totally useless, like we're the number one in America of of what metric. Anyway, so there's just a lot of noise. So for these videos, like, yeah, for my clients that are lucky enough to have an in-house production team, I can get them done really well. A lot of my clients are not, and so I'm turning to some UGC like creator platforms, where you can essentially, it's similar to influencers but less expensive because you're not buying their audience, you're just buying a 60-second testimonial from them. So you still have to ship them out product. You give them talking points just like you would influencers, but there's one called Billow, that it's like $70 a video or something, where you go in, you kind of build your creative brief, and then you get them to fill you essentially pick like 10 people for $700 or something, and you get them to film essentially testimonials. And so you can give these 7 pain points to 7 different content creators and have them be the one to talk about your product. The other thing that I love that's similar to that.
And real fast, actually. So what was the website that you go through to do that? Because I think that sounds awesome, and especially I imagine you're getting kind of like the iPhone or a selfie style testimonial, which is so much better. That's a fantastic way to do it. Yeah,
I
because
have
it
to
feels
tell
real.
you, I don't know this guy's name, but I bought a video from him for Brute Force. We ran it as an ad for a while, and then my fiance and I are getting married in October. I was looking for wedding bands for him, and I started getting served these retargeting ads from the same creator that I had bought a video from for Brute Force. I saw him for this brand called Manly Band. So that guy gets around. He's really good. He's obviously the one that people pick for the ads because he was the number one for me too. And so I'm like, I get it, Manly Bands, but
I feel like this
it's
is
a
definitely
small
a
little
side
network.
hustle somebody should be doing too. Like, I do testimonials. So
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I mean, this guy crushes. But yeah, so um it's the website was Billo, the one that I know about, Billo. There are others. And what I will say, a caveat is, if I am paying $70 a video, I might do 10 of them and be able to use like 2 of them in ads. So, I don't want to get anyone all excited. Like this is the quality of what you get back isn't going to be like what it is if you are in full creative control. But some of the stuff that we've gotten back has, it's worth it if we get one amazing video ad that converts. On, similar note to that is branded content ads. I see some businesses using the crap out of these, and others I feel like just don't know they exist, which is essentially like, I'm sure you guys have seen this in your feeds. Instead of a brand talking about themselves, it's like a person, and it's a person, it's an ad about a brand coming from a person, and that, person and that brand have an arrangement, to allow them to do that on the back end. When I run the exact same video ad from my fiance's creator account, he's no influencer, but he's now a creator. When I run a video ad, so they did a weighted vest launch, and we set him up as a creator, and we ran the same video ad and the same copy from his account, just being like, hey, I'm really proud of my team for what they came up with. This weighted vest is the best on the market, and we've been working on it for a year. And we ran the same thing from the brute force side. And I mostly did that because I was just like curious on the data, like how's this going to go? CPMs were and the thing about it is like Facebook is always going to throw more money and more success into things that they want to blow up. So of course, like they're going to give us more leeway, I think, on a branded content ad than they are, on just a regular ad. So it was like a 7-to-1 across every metric, like amount of impressions,
Jeez.
amount of like clicks, amount of engagements. It like blew the other ad out of the water. So if you have any like influencers you can consider, partnering with, or not even influencers, like I said, like Mike is not one, but
I've seen internal companies. Yeah, companies have used it. I think I've seen what you're talking about from B2B brands, and they just got, executive A or VP of marketing is like the person that the ad's coming from almost, versus big brand B.
Yeah, and totally, if you think about it, it replicates Yelp. Like, it's like if I take out a billboard and I'm like, I am awesome, like that's fine, and some people will believe it. But if somebody else takes out a billboard and says like Claire is awesome, obviously that's going to be more impactful. And so I think that's why we saw a lot more success on the branded content side. Is it somebody else talking about how awesome a brand is rather than you all the time?
Well, I think it also it breaks the fact that it's an ad, right? Like we've seen so many Facebook ads as we scroll through passively, when it looks like a friend that we're not familiar with has posted something to share something, or they're sharing a video. It makes me always pause and go, hey, who is this? Why do I not know them? Especially since I went through a period of not realizing I was hitting the buttons wrong and adding people all the time that I didn't know. So then it was like, do I need to remove them? But still, like, it makes you look at the ad. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's super, super smart, super sensible. It sounds pretty easy to execute on too for people that aren't doing that right now.
Yeah, and like whether you pay that creator or not, is between the brand and the creator. But the side effect of it, if you have a creator, if maybe not a budget to pay a creator, like someone in your circle, is their account grows. So Mike doesn't really care about his Instagram account growing, but there are creators out there that do care about that, and they will get followers and engagement, on their platform, that helps them as well. So.
No, that's awesome. That's a super smart one. I like that. One thing I want to go back to, because I meant to ask this question earlier. So when you're doing with the new budgets, when you're starting a lot broader, and you're doing kind of the video views and the interest, if you were budgeting for that when you're starting a new campaign, on average, knowing that it's going to be different for every single business, but on average, what would you anticipate to spend before you would anticipate a positive ROI? Like, what's kind of that upfront investment, since this takes a little more time than a standard traffic
Yeah,
conversion?
I guess it just depends on how big you want your audience to be before you go for that conversion. So it depends on the cost of the product essentially. But something that frustrates me with launches is they're always just like, hey, we launched yesterday and we want sales right now. And it's like, hey, we got to do a little bit of legwork to get to a place where we have an audience who's even brand aware that we can retarget. So when you are running a video views campaign, if you're running like 30 seconds or less, which is around kind of best practices, like 15 to 45 seconds is kind of the sweet spot for video ads. When you're doing that, like depending on how compelling the video is, you're looking for like 1 to 3 cent video views. So that's why I really like it. Like on the engagement side, like I'll get anything from like 7 cents to $1, depending on whether it's a sexy product or some B2B SaaS thing like that's going to be boring for people. But on the video view side, why this works is because essentially, like, let's say it's like you're willing to pay a CPA of $50 or whatever to get them. You only have to carve out like 10 cents out of that $50 to pre-qualify them by the time they get to that conversion. So it's really it's not negligible, but if you're showing them 2 videos first to build that audience up, like it's not a big chunk of change that you have to carve out. If you've got best practice like shorter videos. So I don't know if that answers your question, but if it's going to take a while, to get to a place where you've got like hundreds of thousands of views on these videos, but it's not going to take a lot of money.
Yeah, unless of course you wanted more views faster and you wanted to pour more
Exactly.
money in. So it's one of those. It depends on what your goal is, right? But so if time is of the essence, then you're going to need to spend more money, and if you have more time to be patient, you could make it more economical. So
exactly,
that makes a lot of sense. That helps me out.
Yeah.
So perfect. Well, anyway, so I sorry to take us all the way back there. So you have that piece. Then of course we talked about the branded ads, which I think is super cool. One other question here, and this might be me being too gray hat here. So there's nothing really stopping you if, say, it's just the idea, the concept, the way the ad's structured. There's nothing stopping you from taking yourself or maybe somebody within a company being like, you're a creator now, and we're just going to send it from your account. So this isn't my ad to say, hey, does somebody want a creator of a stocky bearded weird guy? I mean, if you do, I might be open to it, but no, I'm just kind of like, there's nothing stopping you from doing that, right? Okay.
No, and that's not gray hat at all. I mean, when we did it with Mike, it was super transparent. He said in the copy, he was like, I'm the Brute Force CEO, and I just wanted to say how proud of my team I am for developing this vest that's better than anything else in the market. And so but I don't know that we would have been like, hey, this is random guy Mike, and like people would be like, wait, I thought he's on the website, or like but yeah, essentially I think you could take someone internally and even if you want to be totally white hat and just be like the way we did it, I'm really proud of my team, I think this is awesome. It's still not this nebulous brand talking about themselves.
Yeah. It immediately personifies the brand into a collection of people, which already makes it an easier buying decision, unless you don't like those people, but that's a different thing.
Well, then you just disqualified the wrong people.
Which is old school marketing, which is, people sell, businesses don't. So it just kind of goes back to that original, which is a great segue into another thing that we're doing that is working, that kind of contradicts this idea that I was talking about around, just have better creative and better copy. That's partially true. And, we've kind of talked on the creative side, like getting some user generated content, the old iPhone works better than produced videos these days anyway. That's kind of what's working on that side. On the copy side, like really it's noisy, and the way to stand out is like old school, emotional response copy. It, like I said, can't just be like, yo, got a Labor Day sale, buy stuff. Like that's not going to work. It has to be like, how's this product going to make you feel? Storytelling, like, Justin Goff, Stefan Georgi, like people who sort of have courses to teach this emotional response, long form, copy that's going to stand out, as you're scrolling, is what we're not pivoting to, but continuing to to work over all else.
So on that, are you seeing a particular type of motion work better? I mean, I think the standard copy thing is like negative emotions get more attention, right? Like the negative screams louder, it tends to convert more. But we actually had Ed Scow on some period of time ago. I don't know why, I can't remember how long ago it was. And he talked about, he thinks that, that's not going to be something that will sustain, right? He feels like we're going to just abuse people, and they get enough abuse from, the news, everything that's going on in the world, like the fact they can't buy anything, the fact that we're going through an election cycle right now, which one might describe as contentious. So all the negativity actually makes it less effective. So kind of curious from your opinion, if maybe you're seeing maybe a shift more positive, or maybe it's just a desire from all of us to have positive things in our life, or if it's still negative that wins out.
I think we can go back to that pain point idea. If I'm getting 7 videos done, each one's covering a different pain point, then each one of those copy pieces is going to be like, the standard formula. It's like, what was my life like before? You know, what that's like kind of question one. It was dreary. My muscles were weak. Like, I
You look like me, like a wacky wavy inflatable tube man.
I had noodle arms, and then, what motivated me to buy a brute force sandbag, and then, third, what is my life like afterwards, and how do I feel? And I think if you do that, then it includes both components, and it's a story arc. So yeah, at one point my life was sad, and now my life is amazing. And you know from the Facebook ad sort of policy perspective, what you can't do is say, if you feel like this and your life sucks and your muscles are weak and you look bad, and etc., and then if you get a brute force sandbag, this will happen to you. It's not like that. It's just like, hey, this is my story, this is what happened to me, which implies maybe it would happen to you too.
Mm-hmm. So, and could you still, if you use it, Stefan really hits this one home all the time. It's like, if you're like me,
Right.
this could be your results. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Not this will happen to you. That will get, bots will come for you.
not the bots. We don't want them after
No.
me, like Terminator. That's no good.
All right, I've got one more. One more kind of what we're doing, which is the one that I think, nobody wanted to hear for a long time, which is, in a sense, pivot. Um, you know, I think a lot, like this sunk cost fallacy that applies to gambling can also apply here, where, like, let's say you're a Facebook ads agency and that's like all you do. Fortunately for us, that is not all we do. But if that's the case, then I think it can be really difficult as a marketer to like accept this new paradigm where Facebook just Facebook and all social platforms, like, as a result of this sort of privacy fallout, it's just not what it used to be. And, you know, as everyone's kind of spinning their wheels and falling further down into this shame spiral, the thing to do, um, is to look at other avenues. And so, Mike bought brute force, like, I think something like 6 days before iOS forced everyone to, how like you get the little notification and it's like right now, like 16 is available. It's like, oh cool, like I'll do that later. It takes a long time, and in the middle of the night I might need to clear out some, apps before I have enough space on my thing. But then there comes a point where it's like, you have to accept this. Like, this is the new iOS moving forward. And so prior to that time, I think something crazy like 80% of their sales came from Facebook ads. And so it was a really bad time to close on that company with that one acquisition channel. But it really forced us, like, yeah, it was scary, but it forced us where we had this like long list of stuff that we were going to like work on eventually and like stand up, like ambassador program, affiliates. This is the ClickBank plug. Um, you know, all these other channels that had been sort of neglected, in that realm, it forced our hand to focus on them and to get really savvy with all of them. So that's kind of my final cry is like, obviously Facebook ads are not dead. If they were, I'd be super sad. I have a bunch of clients in that category. And we've, I've maintained throughout this entire process, pre iOS 14, reading all the stuff, all the scary stuff, during kind of explaining to my clients what was going on, and post. And so it's, for them, it's not like, hey, my agency doesn't know what they're doing anymore. It's like, here's the landscape. Let me explain to you what's going on. And here's how much we can squeeze out of this nut as a result of the landscape. And hopefully, it makes sense with your COGS and everything, our CPAs together, we've still got a ROAS that makes sense. And if not, let's look at all these other avenues. There are other ad platforms. Are they hit by iOS? Absolutely. So I'm not saying, hey, just go on, Pinterest and your woes are over. But, a lot of my clients, we do paid search and paid social for them, and we just split the amount of money that we were spending. So we are now spending a lot less on paid social than we were, and we've doubled and tripled down on paid search, which is still affected, but a little bit less so. And so I think a lot of agencies are seeing people push more money onto the paid search side, but also to build out those other acquisition channels, like old school direct mail, email marketing, outbound. Like e-commerce companies doing outbound is really interesting to me right now. Calls, like brute force calling on gyms and, fire stations, and just basically coming to terms with the fact that things have slowed down a little bit around here, and we just need to get our eggs all out of this basket.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think it is that I love that you brought up kind of the sunk cost theory that's the big in gambling or just in general, right? Like we're always told if we performed like a quant and economically efficiently, we would never consider sunk cost. But hell, I do it when I go to a restaurant. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure I want anything on the menu, but I'm here now, so I guess I'll just order. It's like just stupid decisions we constantly make based on that sunk cost theory. But yeah, I think that idea of just you gotta pivot, and if anything, it hopefully for the smart businesses, it's really prepped you for what is also impending, at least in the States, with this recession that will come. Right? We had atypical economic behavior for 2 years, and whether you call it a recession or a regression, changes that are happening. That are going to affect your business. And so if you're willing to just pivot and find the next option, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, as long as you're willing to go out and find the next new golden age of what Facebook provided for you, where it can make marketing seem easy. Or if it has to be hard, you're just going to have to go back to making it hard again, and find some interesting opportunities to succeed. But yeah, outbound on e-commerce, that sounds super interesting.
Right? I mean, that's like, if you were selling sandbags 500 years ago, how would you do it? You would like walk around your town and be like, I've got this.
Yeah,
Give me
sell it out of your
money for
trunk.
it.
You would really draw a line in the sand. You'd probably go to a beach like Muscle Beach with empty bags, fill them up, and get the sweaty guys to go do it. Something like that. So um, anyway, instead of us building out ad campaign ideas, I think that's really big and definitely something that people should ask themselves. Right? If you're not pivoting, if just take a moment, reflect. Don't think about all the investment, all what's happened before, but just right now where your best opportunities lie.
Yeah,
So
my word of 2021 was diversification. Because when you do it with stocks, when you do it with anything in your life, like it brings more calm than when you have 100% of your vested interest in Facebook ads. Is sort of a bummer of a way to go. So now, right after that, it was nowhere near as impactful, but iOS 15 affected email marketing. And so, each time it's like, hey, surprise, here's a new, like, sort of scary thing to face. And you can kind of rest assured, like, oh, that's okay. Like, my email marketing, might suffer by X%, but I've got all these other things stood up, and I don't have to worry as much.
yeah, yeah. Thomas, any other questions or anything you want to add?
I've got a few, but I wanted to give you a chance, Claire, for people to figure out where can they find more out about you, like if they wanted to come explore your services with your agency or things like that. I have a few, we'll call them bonus questions after that.
Our agency is Best Practice Media. We are headquartered in Austin and Denver. We do organic social, which is rare because it is so resource heavy. Organic social, paid social, organic search, paid search, and influencer marketing.
I'll be sure to include that in the show notes and everything like that. I just had really two questions that can be rapid fire for you. Are there, do you find that I call them third party trackers. I don't know if that's the right term. Things like Hyros or Red Track or Volume, Everflow, et cetera. Do you find that those help with any of the data matching, data tracking across platform?
It helps with that first one that everyone's focused on, which is tracking. It doesn't help with the fact that Facebook doesn't know who's in what audiences. But why I like Hyros is it's got a plugin that goes directly into Facebook Ads Manager and will allow me to see the difference between what Facebook is reporting and what Hyros is reporting. And Hyros will allow me to select the attribution model that I want. So whether it's last click or scientific, I can toggle between them and see like, okay, how does this data relate to the data that's being lost on the Facebook side? And I think that plugin is really great because a lot of people will say, oh, you don't need Hyros, just use Google Analytics and dynamic UTM codes and you'll be fine. But that assumes you have like a lot of time where you can get the Facebook data, take that to Google Analytics, compare the two, and then bring that back to Facebook and say, like, based on this, I'm going to make these changes in another platform. So I think like a melding of the two, being able to see it all in one window has been really helpful for me.
Okay, that makes sense. And then when you're, let's say it's like a lead call, someone that you're chatting with, that you're exploring, is there like a gut check you have on like a minimum CPA where you're like, okay, that could work? Like, where's your line with that on like a CPA on Facebook?
It totally depends on the product. But, these days my preference is for products that cost more because it gives me more leeway to get higher CPAs. And I can just focus on profit margin instead. But yeah, I mean, it totally depends on the product. But if it's like, hey, we've got a $5 product and we want to run Facebook ads, I'm like, that doesn't give me, and our COGS are $350. Like, that I think the COG versus price conversation, if I can get them to give me that information, is really important for me because I do back into those numbers. Like, at what point do these CPAs not make any sense?
Yeah, that's something you have to look at any customer acquisition channel, right? We do the same thing with affiliates. And it's like, how much do I pay affiliates? It's like, how much can you afford not to pay affiliates,
that's a
right?
really
If you don't want to get traction.
question.
So,
well, I think you really hit it on the head too. It's like the more that you could play with, the more availability you have as a marketer to test, scale, be patient, spend time and really scale a campaign. You just, when you have that leeway, I say all the times, like the more you could pay, the more you could play. Same with affiliates, same with media buying. Really, I'd say just in marketing in general, whoever could pay the most could play the most and get the most money afterwards. So, well, awesome. Well, I know we're over the hour. I don't want to have to take too much of your time. Someone's calling me in my ear. That's super bizarre and weird. Yeah. So really appreciate the time. Again, for all the users out there, be sure to go to the website. We'll actually put some of the links in the talks and videos that Claire mentioned in the show notes as well. So you could reference those things. So they're super amazing. Really loved what you covered today. I thought it was just really insightful, impactful, hopefully something that people could take and change their business tomorrow after listening to it. And again, just really appreciate your time, Claire. Everyone out there, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, all the things that you're supposed to do on the podcast. And please continue to ask questions. Send us an email, a Facebook post, especially to Thomas, or on Instagram with anything you'd like to see, anyone you'd like us to talk to, and we'll definitely do our best. And as well, just be excited and on the lookout. And if this, depending on when this drops, we are going to be at TNC. We're going to be doing some live podcasts there. Those are always super fun. Lots lots of great energy. Granted, we'll probably be in a little bit more of a quiet room than last time, but it should be a good time. We're excited for that. But of course, thank you again, Claire. Thank you all the listeners. And Thomas, what do you say to send things off?
Happy scaling, everybody. Let's go.
Happy scaling. Perfect. All right, awesome. Thanks so much.